Okay. Let's see, make sure this is going. There we go. All right. Oh, Robert. How are you doing? Okay, so today I want to read through Felix Cacchione, former head of CERT, who went out the door. I want to read his interview. Straight here. I'm going to go bald, maybe. Don't know. I don't know. We'll see. Because there's some interesting stuff in there. And so it's a little bit of a read, for sure, but I think it's worth it. And definitely we're going to get into, later in the document, we're going to get into some of the July 10th CERT referral stuff. So, and also gives you an understanding, and me, how CERT works. Because we all know that there was maybe some questions in respect to the investigations that were conducted in Onslow and Enfield. Now, if we start off, Nikki, hello, Rob, Clayton, hello, Grandma. I love grandmas. If we look here, this is happening on September 9th, right? If we go to, let's see if I've got this lined up. We go to Leathers, which we went through yesterday, right? Felix called him. Let's see, where's that? One moment. Felix called him. So towards the end, he was asked if he wanted to add anything. Excuse me. Is there anything else on the issue of CERT referral, July 2020? Okay, so that's this very serious criminal nature cover-up, high-ranking officers from multiple departments. Sexual stuff, diversion of monies, source monies. So that's to agents. Very serious issue. So asked if he wanted to add anything. Chris Leather, of course, well, to be full and frank, the only other thing that I thought I should raise is about 2 weeks ago, maybe 3, Director Cacchione reached out to my old office in H Division looking for me to call him, which I did. He now, of course, is retired several months. I did speak to him by phone from Ottawa, and he noted to me that he was going to be having an interview with the Mass Casualty Commission and in the coming days. And did I recall a meeting that we had in July 2020 about the referral? And I said, yes, of course. And it was obvious to me that he was not recalling much about the discussions at the time, because, as we can see, there are a few more than one, in person twice, and at least one phone call, and he couldn't recall when the outcome of the decision was, and I had, in anticipation of the phone call, pulled my email. So he was expecting the phone call. And most important to me with the decision was the decision email, the final email that he wrote to me in October. And he thanked me for providing that call. Call it recollection. Okay, so that's a pretty important little tidbit he wants to throw in there, Chris does. CK just started catching up on weekend stuff, documents, reading documents at the camp. Anybody had a nice little? I'll tweet that out later. There's a nice little thing I found. I'm like, well, there's a whole bunch of them. Some of these are just utterly shocking, I'll tell you. Okay, so this takes place the 9th. Okay, so Chris's took place on, what was that, the 23rd, I think, the last day of the hearings, the last day, and of course the 22nd was when some more on the July referral came out, July 2020 CERT referral, day before the conclusion of the mass casualty. So 3 weeks before we have the interview with their roundabouts there with Felix. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone who is in Nova Scotia. Good afternoon to those of you who are on the West Coast. It's 2:03 Atlantic time. This is an interview of Mr. Felix Cacchione, former Cacchione, director of CERT, Serious Incident Response Team, province of Nova Scotia, and this interview is taking place by way of Microsoft Teams. So I'll start by asking everyone to introduce themselves for the purposes of the transcription software that we use, and we'll ask you to say your titles, where you work, and if it's appropriate, whether you consent to this interview, recording and transcribe, become part of the Mass Casualty Commission's public record. Also remember, people get the option of doing the Sharpies on whatever they want. So I'll start. My name is Barbara McLean. My last name is Pelt McLean. I am Commission's investigator, director. I am consent to this being recorded. So I'll start with the other Commission staff, the interview, Emma Ronsley, and then to you, Mark Underhill. So over to you, Miss Ronsley. Now, one other thing I should note in here is that there was a letter that was supplemented to this, which may come into play. A moment. What was that here? No, that's not it. Oh, shoot, I closed that window. Of course I did. One moment. We'll get it here. We'll get it. There was a bit of an addition to this interview that they wanted to be on the record. Oops. It's not. Why did it do that? It's always resetting itself now. You notice that? Everybody notice that? Okay. So this is the Department of Justice. Things are just starting to heat up over in that kitchen now. Department of Justice, September 20th. 3 days before Chris's interview, 11 days after Felix's interview. From the Nova Scotia Department of Justice, September 20th. Dear Miss Hill, with mass casualty, report a picket inquiry. This is to further in the inquiry of MCC, former director CERT, Honorable Felix Cacchione, Friday, September 9th, 2022. Subsequent to the interview, Nova Scotia Department of Justice confirmed with CERT that the 2013 MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, is the only MOU in force of H Division with the RCMP and CERT, and that the other MOU referenced in this transcript is not applicable. The other MOU must not be disclosed in relativity and is not relevant to the interview. Okay. Page 45, 102, and we can references his understanding of CERT has expanded to include the operating part of New Brunswick. We note that the clarification at the time, the only agreement in principle that has been entered into between Nova Scotia and New Brunswick at present, work of CERT is conducted in New Brunswick on an ad hoc basis. Nova Scotia continues to provide ad hoc investigations in New Brunswick and as operations allow reference legislation while both provinces work towards a long-term agreement. I would be grateful if you would ensure that this letter accompanies Mr. Cacchione's transcript. So, must not be disclosed. Okay. Glenn, B-Man, Invasion. Glenn B, Glow Watcher, Linda M, Donna. No, but it gives some insight, right? I'm sure people can hang around for a little bit, right? It'll get interesting though. It does, I assure you. Thanks, Emma Ronsley, Research Policy Team. I consent to this interview being recorded. Mark Underhill, also with the Research Policy Team Commission. I consent to the interview being recorded. Great, thank you. Says Barbara. So Mr. Cacchione, I'll to introduce himself, and we'll start with the members of the Nova Scotia Attorney General. I'll go to you, Mr. Gores, and then to you, Mr. Anderson. Okay, so he's got a pile in there with him. Right. They're all worried. Can't just do an interview, Oh, everybody's scared. Everybody's scared. Of what, I wonder? My name is Felix Cacchione. I consent to this interview being recorded. Thank you. My name is Edward Gores, Senior Counsel, Province, Nova Scotia Department of Justice, and I consent to this interview being recorded. Glenn Anderson. I am a lawyer with the Nova Scotia Department of Justice. I consent to this interview being recorded. By the way, you're paying for all these people, right? It's always good to keep in mind. Great, thank you, everyone. Over to you, Mr. Underhill. Thank you very much, Mr. Cacchione. Just a quick background questions, if you don't mind. First, could you confirm that you were the director of the Serious Incidents Response Team? I'll call CERT for this interview from 2018 to 2022. Okay, so I think he takes over from Ronnie McDonald, who went out to BC, did a video about that what was it, about a year or 2 years ago, something like that. It's an interesting video, the Happy Meals of Justice, I think, or Happy Wheels of Justice, I think I called it. Anyway, he may come into this one here. I was indiscernible until the end of May 2022, and then you retired from CERT in the end of May 22. Correct? Yeah, I did. I just want to spend some time with a couple of the background documents to help us make some information CERT generally. And I want to start with the presentation we understood, that you have prepared. I'm going to ask Ms. Ronsley if she could bring up COM 0062379. You need to get up and more closer to the screen. That's fine. To have a look at it, make sure you're familiar with it. I am familiar with it. I have a copy in front of me on the table. Well, that makes our lives easier. Thank you for that. First, this is the document that you prepared, correct? Yes, it is. Sorry, it is. And when did you prepare it? Do you recall this? Last revision of the document, probably September 2021. I should indicate that most of the document was taken from a presentation that the earliest director, the first director, okay, so that's Ronnie McDonald, right, Happy Meals of or Wheels of Justice video I did on this. Yeah, they're buds. West Coast, East Coast, not just in the RCMP. I've made some changes to it, but I think in essence it's the same presentation because Ronnie just moves out to BC and does the same thing after he found CERT. And to the best of your knowledge, it contains an accurate overview of CERT. It does, yes. It takes both the Police Act, Section 26, and the Regulation Acts pertaining to CERT. It's taken from both. Let's start, if we can, on page 1 and talk about the purpose of CERT. Make sure that we understand it properly so you can properly tell me that you agree with the summary of the report of CERT and that it was created as an independent body. Police involved serious incidents involving injury, death, or potential criminal conduct by police. Is that right? They took the video down? Oh, well, it should be there. Anyway, who knows? Now you go ahead. You also go ahead. Sorry. It is restricted and potentially criminal offenses. Shootings, sexual assaults, anything involved, criminal activity, police, assaults, on the job or off the job. Now, in this document, it has notes. Section 2 addresses serious incident. Section 2 of the Police Act, defines serious incident that talks about, death, serious injury, sexual assault, or any matter determined under this act to be public interest to be investigated. Yes. And what I wanted to ask you about specifically is that latter public interest category. If you can confirm for me, does that include things like fraud or drug trafficking or other potential criminal conduct? Right? It does. We have investigated thefts committed by officers. We had drug offenses. It could extend to perjury. And there may be something else in nature that will arise in the future. Something that may arise in the future. Okay. Potential fraud, drug trafficking, criminal conduct. Is there some potentially criminal conduct by police that would not rise to the level of seriousness such that they would be within the written mandate of CERT? I think common assault would not rise to the definition under the Police Act, but an assault and a common assault, and by that I mean touching of a person without their consent, it's not the performance of lawful duty, and then something that we investigate. Try to stay away from those, but it is something that we would investigate. If you made a decision not to investigate that type of matter, maybe we'll just look at an example of common assault. What would happen to that complaint if you decided that it is you, CERT, decided not to conduct the investigation? CERT, you decided not to do the investigation. We would refer the matter or advise the complainant. The matter would be best looked at by the Police Complaints Commission or the Civilian Review or Complaints Commission for the RCMP. Now, do you make a direct referral, or do you, as I think you suggested, simply advise that the complainant do that. We would advise the complainant. Just one follow-up on that point, if it's okay. Yes. Mr. Cacchione, if there is no or if the report that came to you didn't come from a complainant, but for example, came from a police agency. You see where this is going? What would you do then? Would you still advise? You know, whoever was the affected person in that report? Or would you advise the police agency that referred it to you that should be directed to the CRCC or the Police Complaints Commission? If the complaint came from a police agency in the form of, and we've had referrals like this where the force is referring a matter to us and over the phone give us a general overview, I would ask that any reports that have been prepared would be forwarded to us so that I could review them and make a decision on whether or not to take the referral and begin an investigation. And there is a reference to that in the annual report, and it is referred to as investigations without charges. Yeah, investigations by police agency. Right. And so if the referral comes from a police agency and CERT decides it's not within its mandate to investigate, is it then on the police agency to ensure that it is referred to an appropriate body, whether that be the CRCC or the Police Complaints Commissioner? Or would CERT refer it to the CRCC or the Police Complaints Commissioner itself? I'm just asking if there is no complainant to advise to take the matter forward, or how does it get to the CRCC or the Police Complaints Commissioner? I can't answer that because I've never faced that situation. Never faced that situation. Okay. I want to make sure I'm getting this correctly here. The ones where a referral has been made to, or a suggestion that matter really should lie with the Police Complaints Commission, is where the complainant has made the complaint, the allegation to us. There were a number of them. You know, they have homeless shelter in front of the library, police actions there. A lot of those complainants would call. We would just refer them to the Police Complaints Commission. But if it's, am I getting that correctly? If it's a police agency, he's never dealt with that. Okay, thank you. You referenced Mr. Cacchione in an annual report. Perhaps we can actually go there now. Some background questions in mind. If you could pull that up, it's public document, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so probably just drop that in. I have a copy of that as well. So it's from the CERT annual report 2021. That's great. We'll make sure that it comes out a child or connected to this transcript. I'm not sure what's going on over there. Just reading it as it is. I wonder if Ms. Ronsley You could go to page 6 if you can, and you'll see there, Mr. Cacchione, a summary of the resources attached to CERT. And I just want to make sure that we understand who those resources are, or the positions at least. The position of director you filed, you said, was 2018, or that you filled was 2018 to 2022, correct? Are you referring to page 6? Yes, correct. That's page 3 on the copy I think we have. Oh, sorry, yes. It's page 6 on the PDF counters, page 2 on the document. Sorry for that. Sorry about that. Yeah, that's my fault. Yes, I see that. Yeah, we have that. So we just want to make sure that we understand the positions associated with CERT, at least during your tenure. So first of all, there was you as the director, correct? Yes. And there were 2 retired police officer investigators, our employees, correct? Yes, at the time there was Keith Stoddart and Terry Baleen. Baleen. I'm not sure if I've got the pronunciation right. Terry Baleen retired. Yes, okay, good. Luke replaced Keith Stoddart retired first, and he was replaced by Luke Cote. And Terry Baleen retired and was replaced by Patricia Davis. And there were 2 seconded police officer investigators, one from Halifax and one from RCMP. This has always been an issue I've had, is because I'm not very independent. It's always police. All police. Yes, yes. But during the course of my tenure, there were different seconded officers. This report in 2021 annual report, but there were other officers from the RCMP. Gordon Vale was one of the seconded officers. He was there during my duration of tenure. Let's see, Kevin Smith was of Halifax Police, and then he was replaced by Ron Legere, who returned. He did not stay for, well, neither did Smith or Legere stay for their 3-year terms, because they were looking for promotions and received from Halifax Police. The last one was Kevin Hovey. I believe they also got awards. Anyway, so I understand you've told me compliments, overall compliments, say the same during your tenure, that is essentially for investigators. It has, yes. And then on top of that, you had 1 administrative assistant. Yes. And I'll talk a little bit about the division of responsibilities between the director and the investigators. And we understand it. The director writes the reports, correct? Yes. And the investigators, we assume, gather the evidence. They do. Do the investigators have a role in providing the director with recommendations for the report? They sometimes do. In their written reports indicate that, in their opinion, either a charge is warranted or a charge is not warranted. But that's their opinion. And it's not the one that is that the director is bound to follow. The direction, do they indiscernible? Go ahead. The importance of reviewing the reports asks that further investigation be conducted for clarification, Someone's name appears, and that it is in some document the person's not been interviewed, that they be interviewed. Hello, Charlene, Tara, Peter. Happy Sunday to everybody. So I understand what you've told me again. 1, investigators may make recommendations, but they don't necessarily always do. Correct? Yes. And 2, those recommendations are not in any way binding to the director. Correct? They are not. What role does the director play in the oversight of investigations, if any? As I said, if upon review of the report the director is not satisfied with it, all avenues have been covered, then the director may ask that further investigations be done. There are also, ongoing meetings, staff meetings, sometimes weekly, sometimes, once a month, depending on the workload, where the director is brought up to speed on an investigation. Okay. Once a month, maybe. And the director could make suggestions. Has this person been looked at? Have you looked at this avenue? Yeah, but that's the way it was run when I was there. Or maybe could it also be turned on its head and don't look at that person? Could that be? I don't think there's anything to look at there. Maybe. Did the investigators provide the director with written updates or investigations from time to time? I can't recall written updates. Can't recall written updates. But you did have meetings to discuss the status of investigations in person, I take it. Yes. Obviously subject to COVID. Well, during COVID, we did at least one that I remember on the back deck of my house with people distanced appropriately. We did one on the back deck of my house. How long was COVID again? But yes, it was mostly updates that there were certain investigations where certain investigations stood, where somebody could say, I have more than one witness to interview, and then I'll be working on my report, or new witnesses have come up. We'll, have to interview these people. Might explain how these experts are retained, if you might, by CERT. Who makes the decision? Who's involved in making recommendations for the retainer of an expert? The director is involved. You have to appreciate that the director is not someone who has police training. Cannot be, as you are aware, a police officer or a former police officer. So, in instances where the director makes a recommendation for a use of force, for example, that I had done on several occasions, because in one, in particular, where I can recall a shooting in Summerside, Prince Edward Island, where I was requested that a use of force expert be retained. That was explained to me. Also, anyone who could read the report, who would read the report, why the force was determined to be justified, in fact, justified. So that it wasn't just, I don't think this, amounted to a criminal offense. And I don't know what the training involves when an officer is confronted by someone who is raising a firearm in their direction. Are they, I always had a feeling, they should, quote, why don't you just shoot them in the knee, end quote. Well, that's not how they're trained to shoot. And so my purpose is also, the public purpose, sometimes experts would be retained. Sometimes. And so that decision, that would be a decision of the director, correct? Yes. And would you receive again recommendations potentially from investigators? Well, the Summerside incident I recall is I was the one that said we needed a use of force expert. The investigating officer, who had many years of experience on HPD, had concluded that, the use of force was justified. And I wanted more information on the use of force. So there may or may not be a recommendation from the investigator with respect to the retainer. It may arise, we should look at having an expert here, and that comment could come from one of the investigators. They're not precluded from making those suggestions. If we might go back to page 1 of the report, I'll just reference the page numbers of the report because you're looking at a hard copy, so it's an executive summary. Oops. Summary. And on the left-hand column is the penultimate paragraph. You'll see the discussion. There is a discussion of a number of files open, including those that resulted in investigations. And as I understand the report in this year, 24 of those files resulted in investigations. And then you'll see in the next paragraph that it said fairly consistent with about an average of 25 investigations per year. Yes. Hello, Truth. Nosy. Is it your view that the 4-person investigative team you had during your tenure was adequate to meet the demands of CERT? At certain times, it was adequate. On other occasions, it was inadequate. And I'll make reference to, in the May of 2018, one of the investigators was headed to a conference at the Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement Meetings in Winnipeg, and another officer was at Cape Breton on leave enjoying Highland Links. Golfing, I presume. Another officer was at his cottage down in the Shelburne area, and we had a duty officer on duty in Halifax. So nobody's minding the hen house. There was a shooting, a fatal shooting in Westville that required a person in Shelburne to come to assist the duty officer. The following day, there was a shooting in Summerside PEI, which required an officer who was on leave in Cape Breton to go to PEI. It would have been preferable to have, 6 investigators at the time. So I think the question is, do we have enough personnel? As things stand, the expansion of CERT in New Brunswick and potentially to PEI, the expansion, right, because CERT's taking over. Definitely, we do not have sufficient personnel. There should be at least, in my view, 8 officers, preferably 10, to cover PEI and New Brunswick. So where were they again? Let me just see here. One of the officers was at a meeting in Winnipeg. One was in Cape Breton on leave enjoying golf. Another was at his cottage in the Shelburne area, and the other was on duty in Halifax. So then they had nobody to cover. So then that means we should hire more people. Perhaps maybe some just basic scheduling might come in play there. Like maybe have somebody employed at the time. And then leaving aside those 2 provinces, just sticking to Nova Scotia, do you think there is more than 4 is needed? I would prefer we have more than 4, but it's there are weeks where there's no incoming referrals. There are weeks where referrals are made, and they have the amount of a review file, and they amount to a review file which don't take the precedence over an active investigation. And there are weeks like the ones we described where you have 2 fatal shootings in 2 days. And you need personnel. Yes, in my view, there should be 6 here to just cover those on occasions. But I doubt that we would get funding for that, because some person in government would say, well, you said you had 45 investigations last year. Why is there nobody working? And then the claim is that, well, we need more people because we scheduled everybody to be off. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Let's talk a little bit more about the seconded police officers. During your tenure, was it always the case that it was one Halifax Regional Police and one from the RCMP? It's been that situation since 2012. And why is that? Why is it that one from each of those 2 police forces in particular? I wasn't there when it was set up, but I would imagine it was because there were the 2 largest police forces in the province and the forces that would have more experience. So I guess that was under Ronnie. Ms. Ronsley. Just move to page 6 of the report, page 10 of the PDF counter on for a second. Is that the one entitled Statistically Speaking? You got it. And just sort of a follow-up question on that. You see there's 2 pie charts on the page. I just want to make sure the one at the top is titled Percentage of Investigations by Police Agency. Do you see that? Yes. And as I understand it, what it is telling us is that 42% of CERT's investigation involved the RCMP. Yes. And I suppose that is to be expected. Tell me if you agree with this. Is that to be expected, given the relative size of the RCMP in Nova Scotia? Definitely. So, did you turn your mind to whether, given that reality, it would be appropriate to draw officers from other police forces to avoid the sort of conflict of the RCMP investigating the RCMP? What did I used to call it way back when? The shit. I think, was that what the intro was? The shit? I had all the proof of who was working there. The RCMP never investigated the RCMP. Oh, is that so? The RCMP never investigated the RCMP. Okay. Just so I got it clear here. I want to be sure. Never want to see any RCMP files with any RCMP on it, ever. That would never happen under Felix. Any investigation that was related to the allegation that an RCMP officer committed some offense would be investigated by one of the seconded officers. One of the seconded officers not from the RCMP? Yes, definitely, yeah. Oh, okay. So I guess the one HRP guy is picking up 42% of the cases. Okay. Yes. And so, again, that would make sense in your view to consider an additional either retired officer or seconded officer from another police force, given the number of RCMP investigations, if I can put it that way, that CERT was having to conduct. I don't want to disparage other forces, but quite frankly, I think that the most experienced and qualified investigators come from the 2 forces that seconded officers have to us in the past. So only HRP or RCMP. If you're looking at the 3rd largest force in the province is Cape Breton. And quite frankly, the investigations in the past that have been conducted by that force have led to some unfortunate consequences I'm referring to the Marshall inquiry and the Marshall situation. Oh, a small world. I just don't think that there's the amount of experience. They don't have as many calls. They don't have as many incidents to investigate and therefore don't have the experience. So what I hear you saying is there is some level of concern with the experience of the investigators from other police departments in Nova Scotia. Well, I can tell you that I wouldn't want, an officer from the Stellarton Police Department. They've been at what? 4 people? Not that they would let that person go. Certainly. Yeah, I think volume brings experience. Before I move on to another topic, you could bring people from out of province, That might even be more interesting because, well, they have less ties. Well, I can tell you that I wouldn't want, before I move to another topic, I'll just invite the rest of the team to put forward any follow-up questions they might have on what's been covered so far. Barbara McLean. Thank you. I have a question on selection. So, for the purpose of this transcript and anybody reading it, it's almost like they knew, there would be no recordings ever publicly. Do you have a say in those that are seconded? Like, is there an actual job call process, or do you take the candidates that are sent by Halifax Regional Police or the RCMP? We interview the persons that are either of the RCMP, HRP, HPD refer. And those interviews, from those, we select the persons that we feel are most qualified to be with CERT. And it was always posted in both organizations that CERT is looking for someone who is interested. Put your name forward. That kind of changed with Chief Kinsella, who is not prepared to. I couldn't attend at interviews, and I asked that they be put over. And, well, somebody in your office can attend that interview, and this is the person that we're sending over. Fortunately, the person was qualified, but I did interview a previous HPD personnel, and the change of the chief, that seemed to take a turn. Oh, so it seems like Chief Kinsella not liked over in this neck of the woods either. Excuse me. Okay, thank you. And that, I'll leave it at that, Felix says. Okay, so there's obviously more to the story. Thank you. Don't want to ask. And that dovetails into my next question. Has the job calling or the posting, has it always been filled? Has there always been candidates for your organization from the 2 that there's been a vacancy? Yes, there has been. And as I said, the last one, it is essentially a name that was put forward, and there was an interview, and from the interview that was conducted by one of the permanent investigators, it was determined that the person was qualified and in fact proven to be so. Okay, so it's a name gets suggested, and then another investigator who's already on CERT does the hiring. Okay, right. And this is a hypothetical in the sense that you got one candidate from HRP. What would you have done if that candidate had not been suitable for your organization, I would have asked that somebody else, the posting be up again until somebody who was suitable. Doesn't sound like there's a lot of applicants either. And it's not from only the experience in terms of investigations, it's being able to investigate another investigator and someone who comes at this without a bias that would tend to lead them, maybe not to look at something as carefully as they should, because it was another police officers. Oh, let's understand. Another police officer or other police officers, but transcription, whatever. What I can tell you from my experience with all the people that I have worked with as investigators is there is that they don't like dirty cops. They are proud of the profession that they had or that they still have, and they are prepared to, call it as they see it. If there is evidence that establishes that an officer did something that is criminally wrong, they will say so. Right. Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is that were you able to go back or rather, this candidate ended up being suitable for the work for the CERT team itself. Are you a bit at the mercy of the leaders of those organizations that send you the candidates? Recommended. I don't think we are at their mercy. We do the job. We post the job and send it out to the agencies that we are looking to. And hopefully we get all of the names of the people who have applied or put their names forward, and then we choose from those. Okay. And if I heard you correctly, if a candidate that was sent and was interviewed was not deemed suitable, you would run short until you would identify a suitable secondment? Yes. If I was there and that situation presented itself, I would. Okay, great. Thank you. Those are my questions. You have to bear this in mind. There is a very small office, so people have to be able, not only to have a skill set, but also to be able to work within the confines of this very small office. So you don't want somebody who walks in and shuts the door and doesn't talk to anybody else. No, more money for a bigger office. Right. So suitably and fit. Yes. Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, Ms. Ronsley, anything on your end? No, thank you. Mr. Cacchione, do you have a hard copy of the Memorandum of Understanding between CERT and H Division? What was that? Oh, yes. Don't talk about that other one. Do not put that in there. Well, I do. The one that I have is dated August of 2013, but I don't believe that it has changed since then. Okay, hasn't changed. So I'm going to ask Ms. Ronsley if she could bring up the version of that. It's COM 59606. I don't have that. Oh. We have that up on the screen as needed. Yes. So, if you're familiar with this document, I take it. Well, the one I have is dated 20th August 2013, and this one is dated July of 2013. Plus, the one I have, Section 5, deals with financial arrangements. This is interesting. And the version that we have was provided to the commission by the RCMP. We may not have the version that you are looking at. But if we might go to the signature page, Ms. Ronsley, of our version, we will compare the signature of that of Mr. Cacchione has in front of him. Do you see on the screen there, Mr. Cacchione, we've got the signatures of Alphonse McNeil and Ronnie McDonald. Yes, from July 2013. What is your signature page? My signature page is, well, first of all, it's dated August 20th, 2013, and the signature has Alphonse McNeil, the commanding officer, a witness, and it's dated, signed 2014, February 18. And the minister, Lana Matlang Diab, and the one I have is a Memorandum of Understanding. Mr. Gores, is that the version that you provided to Mr. Cacchione? No, says Mr. Cacchione. It is a version that I obtained from our office. Unfortunately, I was unable to obtain the most recent Memorandum of Understanding because I retired and therefore I was locked out of my computer. And the question about this came up yesterday, I think, or a few days before, so I couldn't retrieve it. This is what I got. Interesting. Well, maybe we'll ask, a copy could be made of that for us to provide a copy at the conclusion of the interview. So maybe what we'll do is this. If that's all right, we'll work off the version we have for now. And maybe you can find the equivalent provision on the hard copy. But if we go back, Ms. Ronsley, to Section 5, page 3 on our document, the heading, Mr. Cacchione, is preliminary investigation. Oh, what was it before? What did he have? Financial. What was it? Financial something? Financial arrangements. Oh, so it's a totally different document. Preliminary investigation. Yes. So if you could find that section, I have a copy of Section 5 being the preliminary investigation. Yes. Oh, so now he has it. All right. That's helpful. I should indicate to you that does not appear as the Memorandum of Understanding dated August 20th, nor has that provision, i.e., the RCMP preserving scene, etc., appear in any MOU that I signed. And I said, what? The RCMP supplied the Mass Casualty Commission a document that wasn't in force. What? Oh, what's that about there? So it's your understanding that this provision that we're looking at the screen called preliminary investigation has now been dropped. Is that right, from the MOU? I don't recall ever reading. This is the first time I've seen a preliminary investigation in an MOU. What's going on here? Let's see. Section 5. Okay. Preliminary investigation. RCMP will preserve the scene until such time that CERT takes charge, which may include scene security, preservation of evidence in accordance to the standard RCMP operating procedures, identification of witnesses in detention until CERT takes custody and directs that one be released in accordance with standard RCMP operating procedures, forensic identification and services, including evidence collection, processing, and analysis. B, RCMP will take steps to ensure the compliance of regulations under the Police Act regarding separation of officers in all matters identified as serious incidents. Separation of officers. CERT will attempt to attend all relevant scenes at the earliest opportunity. Upon attendance at the scene, CERT will identify immediate resources necessary and make arrangements for those other resources as needed as accordance to the short-term secondment protocols. At the scene, liaison officer will assist CERT in communication needs, CERT RCMP personnel. Okay, signed by Alphonse McNeil and Ronnie McDonald. Okay, so this would have been the old agreement, but the new agreement doesn't sound like it has that. I wonder if that impacts anything. I don't recall ever reading. This is the first time I've seen the preliminary investigation in an MOU, says Felix. And I've signed MOUs for the RCMP and for other police forces outside the province that have been investigated. That matters on our behalf. I can just give you the headings of what I have. The August 20th, 2013, purpose and scope, CERT and the RCMP wish to enter into an agreement, etc. Outlines statutory authorization, which says the Minister of Justice authorized to enter into this agreement, RCMP. The RCMP is pursuant to Operational Manual 54.1. External investigation review to engage independent agency to conduct external review, obligations of the RCMP to appoint and designate RCMP to communicate with CERT, provide CERT and investigate reviewed, obligations of CERT to conduct independent, thorough investigation. Section 5, financial arrangements. Section 6, the term and duration of the one that was from August to December 2013. Departmental representatives, and that's basically liaison person to liability, dispute resolution, intellectual property rights, monitoring, termination, confidentiality, performance, force majeure, conflict, and general. So that sounds like to me that it's fairly significant rewrite of the version that we currently have. So as I said, we'll follow up on that post-interview to make sure that we have the current version so that I can tackle the issue the way we wanted to cover it this way. So they're going to ask him about an agreement that wasn't in force. And what was it that they said? Am I understanding that correctly? What was that they said there? The 2013 Memorandum of Understanding is the only Memorandum of Understanding in force. between H Division and RCMP CERT, and that the other memorandum referenced in the transcript is not applicable. The other memorandum of understanding must not be disclosed in relativity and is not relevant to the interview. How did this come to pass exactly? Which agreement was truly in force? One has to wonder. Very odd. Very odd indeed. Fairly significant rewrite of the version. Who supplied that again? Oh, right. The RCMP. That says that they're going to preserve scenes and separate officers and do all this other stuff. Doesn't seem to be in Felix's copy. It's about the relationship between the RCMP and CERT when it comes to the crime scene and preservation of evidence. Are you aware of whether it is always the case during your tenure, of course, that the RCMP would start collecting and processing and analyzing the evidence at the crime scene until CERT was able to take charge? Do you know how that worked? The RCMP were well aware that once we accepted a referral that is in our investigation, now, if we couldn't get somebody on site immediately, they were there to preserve the site as well. And I will give you as an example, which occurred in New Brunswick. And this was one before the arrangement that we could have to cover New Brunswick. So, okay, is it applicable even? I don't think so. And we did receive a call of a shooting in Trans-Canada, because this is all ad hoc stuff. So it's not even applicable what he's mentioning here. Now, that's an 8-hour drive from here. Investigators up there, the RCMP maintained a scene. During that time, nothing was touched. People were detoured off Trans-Canada. So in my experience, once they are engaged, they are under our direction. And I don't have any recollection of RCMP collecting evidence before we're on scene. I don't have any recollection of RCMP collecting evidence before we're on scene. I'm thinking Wayne and Mr. Bryson, questions to do with 46, position of bodies. A lot of funny things going on here. So your understanding then is that the RCMP's job was to, as you say, secure the scene as essentially keep it intact until CERT arrives. Is that fair? Yes. And the same applies for HRP, or, if something occurred in Cape Breton, we would ask that Cape Breton Regional maintain the scene until we could get somebody there. But what MOU are they truly operating underneath? Because the MOU that he has a copy of doesn't mention any of that. That's not a legal contractual thing. I don't know. Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Thank you. Can we just take 2 minutes? I've had too much coffee. Yeah, okay. Take as much time as you need. That's fine. Okay, thank you. Absolutely, thank you. So it's 1:01. We're taking a break. Hold the phone. I'll start again. Okay, so it's 1:15. Okay, so 14-minute break. Maybe it's a big building. Atlantic. Wasn't he at home? And we are continuing indiscernible interview with Mr. Cacchione. Go ahead, Mark. Maybe you had a conversation. Thanks, Barb. So, Mr. Cacchione, while we were while we were off the record, I directed you to your presentation off the record. I will now put on the record that it's COM 62379. And if I could direct you to the bottom of page 4, maybe we should have a quick look at that. So that is more recently submitted, 63279. Okay, so this is an Atlantic Police Academy high-risk vehicle stop. Wow, the mountains of paperwork. Jesus. If I could direct you, please, to the bottom of page 4, and the last full paragraph that carries on to page 5. And you'll see that there is a presentation there that talks about the responsibility of the agency at the crime scene to secure the scene of an incident in a manner consistent with manners and policies, practices of the agency. And then you go on to say that the presentation goes on to say, this at times has been a problem, and there's a word missing there. Now let's have a look. I don't think I've had a look at this agreement yet. Why did I had that open? 63279. One moment. Three, 62379. Oh, my apologies. I've got the wrong one. I linked the wrong one. My apologies. Six 63279. 623. Oh, what the fuck? 62379. Yeah, okay, this one. Okay, so this is the correct version. My apologies. Thank you, CK. Appreciate that. All right, so page 5. Ensure that. Okay, so let's see. It says, and then you go on to say the presentation. This has at times a problem. This at times has been a problem. I would supervisors to ensure. This has been at times been a problem, and I would supervisors to ensure that scenes are secure. Okay. And there's a word missing there. You'll see ask, I think, supervisors to ensure that scenes are secured. And I wonder if you could elaborate on the problems that you've seen in respect to this issue during your tenure. That was a general comment, and it applied to an incident in Cape Breton, as I recall, where the scene hadn't been preserved, or it had been touched in some fashion before we were on scene. It had been touched in some fashion before we were on scene. So, you encountered one incident that was a problem, is that right? Yes. To your knowledge, has it arisen prior to your tenure then as well? Not to my knowledge. I think I included that in this presentation because the incident of the incident in Saskatchewan, and the name of the deceased escapes me, but certainly it related to a motor vehicle in which he was shot. And the fact that there was a snowstorm, it hadn't been preserved, the snow entered the vehicle, and that there was an RCMP investigation, as I recall. And that was an RCMP investigation, as I recall. And that prompted me to include this, because this presentation was, when I included this one, it was the latest presentation, and I think it was in September 2020, 2021. So I added that to the original presentation. And then continuing on, if you could, at the top of page 5, you'll see that there's a paragraph that addresses the segregation, of the officers at the scene, separating them, right? Okay, we're into Title 5 here again in the other agreement. And you'll also say that segregation has at times been problematic. And I wonder if you could elaborate on that for us. Same kind of situation where officers who are potentially the subject officers are not kept apart. I'm just going to make the point. I'm just making the point that that has occurred where there has been, and it wasn't with respect to the RCMP, but I do recall an incident where HPD, he uses different. Anyway, HPD were reviewing witness officers' statement that were the same. They were just mirrored. And that led me to conclude that the people sort of sat down together and drafted one report that was adopted by the second officer. Oh, I haven't seen anything like this going on anywhere with a mass casualty. Have you? How about if you're sitting and you're getting questioned? You've got two people getting interviewed at the same time. You like that? I love it. How about when you're doing testimony and there's two of them there? Very interesting. This is not how things are done. Just making the point here, continuing on with what he's saying, that it's important that as soon as an incident occurs, and you know who has discharged the firearm, which the second officer it was, and the officers who were around would be witness officers or could be witness officers. Keep them apart. That's all I'm saying. You always keep people apart. That's the way it's done. You question people apart because then you get to the truth. If you have people together in a room, I don't know, like RCMP interviews where there's lots of people in the same room, or unidentifieds, or sisters, or relatives, or you have MCC testimony where you have multiple people and they're kind of like, yeah, that other officer, Heidi, shh, Heidi. Oh, yeah, Heidi. That's the way things are done. Proper investigation. Legally. Not shammy. And you actually addressed that specific issue a little bit later on. You'll see on page 5. Then penultimate. My tongue's not working. Okay, paragraph. And you described a trend in some police agencies of one of the officers writing a report on behalf of other witness officers. And I'm wondering if you could comment on whether that trend was continuing at the time of your retirement, May of 2022. That trend as I explained earlier, was in relation to the incident at the Halifax Regional Police. I don't recall that occurring with RCMP files that we dealt with. I was just alerted. See, these presentations were made to commanding officers and NCOs of this one was in PEI in Charlotte. And they brought in all the NCOs from around the island. So it was not in reference to the RCMP in particular. It was in reference to our experience with as an agency. Reference there was to the HPD. There is specific issue with an agency, properly segregating witnesses or preserving a crime scene. What does CERT do about that in your view? Well, I think one thing that can be done and should be done is that there is a presentation like this is to be made to every policing agency in the province, and it could be done at, meeting of chiefs of police. But hopefully, if it's made there, it will trickle down to officers who actually have to implement the segregation. So staff officers, staff sergeants, duty watch officers, the one that make the call to CERT have to, keep the officers apart, have to make them their notes as soon as possible, independently, not sitting in one room and making collective notes. This is a no-brainer. Children know this one. Just tell my mom about that. We were doing this. I was over there. Yeah. Collusion. Yuck. Most of our parents teach us that's not good. That's being dishonest. Is there anything that can be done by CERT at the time? In other words, when there is an issue with segregation of witnesses, and it sounds like it didn't happen once. Certainly, when I receive calls, you'd get a call in the middle of the night about an incident. I would make it clear that to the officer and to the officers at the scene have to be kept apart and make their own independent reports. That was a practice I had. I would just reinforce or to make it known for the first time, perhaps to the person that I was speaking to, that this was a requirement. Is this hard? Before I move to another area, are there follow-up questions to what we've covered? Emma Ronsley. I do have one. Just what about if it's after the fact, when you get information gathered by investigators that you learn, for example, there was an issue with a police agency preserving crime scene or segregating witnesses, and it's already happened, besides educating the agencies for future about what proper practice, being honest. Is there anything that CERT can actually do to hold accountable the agency that, for not following obligations in a particular case? I don't think we have an authority to do anything. We can certainly bring it to the attention of superior officers that, scene wasn't secured properly, or witness officers were in a room together writing their report, or reports that have to be turned into to be an A report. What's that again? witness officers being brought together in a room, writing their report or reports that turn out to be a report. Or maybe that's debriefing in the barn over beers. But we have enforcement powers. We don't have the authority to do anything like that. We don't have them. Certainly, you can stress the impacts of the matter, and then could impact, if it goes to trial, could impact a decision made by the court. Thank you. I'll just have a follow-up question to that. When you're bringing these instances to the attention of these these instances, when you're bringing these instances to the attention of police agencies, is that done in writing or a phone call? When these instances, how often is this happening? I guess I'm wondering if it's in writing, you could maintain a record of these 4 conversations and show a problem over time. I don't know what they're talking about. 4 conversations? The one I recall was made to the professional standards of HPD, and that was a phone call followed by a report of the investigator, which was sent to the professional standards people. Great, thank you very much. It's just making me think of that video. If I could cue it up right now, I would. Right now, I would. Of the Dunphy inquiry, and the RCMP officer who was speaking to the officer that was involved with the shooting. But it was just a friendly chat. Don't you know? His reactions. I wonder where that officer ever ended up. Oh, he's probably a superintendent now or something. Great, perfect. Thank you very much. So I'd like to go back, if we could, to the Memorandum of Understanding that we have, Mr. Cacchione. But I appreciate, that we have an issue about whether it was certainly in force during your tenure, at the time of your tenure. Article 5. Was this in force at the time? Was this even there? Or did the RCMP just slip this one in and try to say, we didn't. We were under that one. But I just want to ask some questions that arise out of that, and hopefully you can comment on them. So we'll have to bring it up on the screen again, just for the record, 59606. And we're going to look at page 4 of the report, Ms. Ronsley and Mr. Cacchione. I think in the version you have there, similarly, there's no section 7 that deals with short-term secondments and provisions and other resources. I think, is that right? So obviously they have it. They have the one that they seem to know that there's no section 7. My section 7, the report I have is entitled Departmental Representatives. And it indicates that CERT would report to, direct all notices, invoices, consent forms, reports, and other communications to Staff Sergeant Gillespie. And through a term of arrangement that will direct all notices, invoices, consents, etc. to Ron McDonald. And nothing to do with short-term secondments. Nothing to do with it. What the fuck agreement were they under? So, if you could have a look, please, at the screen at section 7, that we have. And in it addresses, at least in part, the use of specialized RCMP resources in certain cases. The first one is in 7E. If you could just mount back up, Ms. Ronsley, if you don't mind. Forensic crime scene investigation. Yeah, you see that? Yeah, I have a copy in front of me. All right. Everybody seems to have the copies. I don't understand. Okay. All right. Thank you. I thought he couldn't get it. Yep. This is an issue you recall arising during your tenure, requesting forensic crime scene investigation. Exactly. And you would have some sort of concurrent investigation going on when CERT is doing its thing. And then you also have the forensic crime scene investigation people there. The one that I recall is the Fredericton shooting, where there was an investigation being done by Fredericton police, where two of their officers had been fatally shot, and the shooter had been shot but survived. Oh, yes. This popped up for me when I was doing some research on something. Connections, interesting. Shot by the RCMP. So those were concurrent investigations. They were doing, Fredericton police was doing its own criminal investigation into the death of the officers, and we were looking at whether the shooting of the shooter, the perpetrator, was justified. What we're interested in particular is 7F. And maybe if you just scroll up a little bit so that we can have, I don't know if we can get the whole paragraph there, but let's start with the first sentence, 7F. Doesn't he have it sitting in front of him? He said that. When, quote, when an RCMP member is the subject of an investigation, it is understood certain resources may be most appropriately provided by RCMP. By RCMP. Very independent. Okay. And it's, the resources are listed. You'll see subparagraph E. And I wonder if you could comment on that, whether you agree with that, and indeed in your experience, was it ever arose that RCMP specialized resources were being provided by the RCMP? Well, Portapic was an example. I believe that I can't recall if we used FIS Halifax for Portapic. I know we used them in Westfall. Portapic. And what's suggested, you'll see in the second sentence, is that those units are, quote, most effective when operating in their own jurisdiction, end quote. And I wonder if you had any comment on that, whether you agree with that. Well, certainly, if you have a crime scene, potential crime scene, that I don't know that I can, if it's like FIS, a specialized unit, is a specialized unit, stuttering, farting, but HRP has their own FIS section, HPD, sorry, and we have called upon them on occasion to investigate RCMP matters because they were nearby. If we have investigating an RCMP subject officer, I would prefer that the closest FIS was an RCMP FIS unit, that is not to be used. Or if there was RCMP unit that was closer, it be from another jurisdiction. For example, a shooting takes place in Nova Scotia, in Amherst, and you got a forensic unit, RCMP unit that's just across the border. Might be more convenient, but certainly in today's society with conspiracy theorists abounding, people are laughable. It would be preferable that another agency look at conducting that portion of the investigation. I don't think that has anything to do with conspiracy. I think that's called conflict of interest. I know that you must have taken that in law school, right? 20 years. Anyway, it also suggested, you'll see at the end of the paragraph 7F, when specialized units are utilized, they are to, quote, operate under the direction of CERT, and an investigator might be assigned to observe their investigations where necessary, end quote. Do you recall this happening? That is, first of all, the forensic unit being directed by CERT. Was that a consistent practice, in other words? Well, as I said earlier on, once we take the referral and begin the investigation, it's our investigation, and it's our investigators direct the RCMP, Halifax Regional Police, Cape Breton Police, Stellarton Police as to what they should do and what is required. So we're in control of the investigation. The investigator, when I use we, it's the investigator. So it's no longer an RCMP investigation. It's a CERT investigation. But who's doing the directing again? Is it RCMP directing the seconded RCMP officer that is directing the investigation on RCMP? I think that's a valid question. You may call RCMP CERT, but they're still RCMP. And it is not like there's crossover between, say, Halifax Regional Police. You know, those integrated units that you once had. It's not like everybody does know everybody. Or any of them. Call it one thing, it's still the same thing. If we can go back up to the Memorandum of Understanding, the one that they have, not the one that Felix was operating under, I guess, to Article 6, the one that they said, what was it again? Oops. Where is it? It was something like, please don't mention that. That the other Memorandum of Understanding referenced in the transcript is not applicable. The other Memorandum of Understanding must not be disclosed in relativity. That's why there's no column. And it's not relevant to the interview. I think it is, because he brought it up. And wasn't he the signature on it? I can't remember if he signed it or not, but certainly the one he had. I just want to clarify, there is uncertainty around whether this MOU is currently in force. You follow? I'm just reading this for the first time, but you can see it right away, like on this part. You can see it right away. He has one guy has one Memorandum of an Understanding, and the mass casualty has another one, and they're like, well, but they're not the same. So which one are you operating underneath? And it appears the one that Felix has is not the one that they had. It has nothing to do with scene preservation, has nothing to do with separating and segregating officers. But that's the one the RCMP supplied the MCC. Not looking very good. And then you have Department of Justice coming in and saying, please don't reference that. Well, no. It's not please don't. Must not be entered into relativity. Must not have a column number. Must not be read by other people. Because maybe you might see something there you don't want to see. Hold on one more. Not looking good. Not looking good. Sorry, just to go back and I just want to clarify that there is uncertainty around whether this Memorandum of Understanding is currently in force. And you'll see the heading there, concurrent investigations again. Yes. And I guess it's technically at the top of the next page. You'll see subsection C says CERT and RCMP will make available all relevant investigative material to the other agency. This shall be subject to relevant legal considerations, end quote. So I wonder if you might comment on your own expectations during your tenure about information sharing between RCMP and CERT during concurrent investigations. Well, I refer to the Fredericton incident. Why are you going there? Why don't you refer to generally? And perhaps provincially, that might be applicable. And I don't think that you can refer to that as information sharing. Refer to it as sharing of information, but I think it was a one-way street with the RCMP providing us information about weapons, the weapon used, the forensics, the photographs being taken by of the shooter. We weren't telling the RCMP where we stood in our investigation. So you describe Fredericton at least as one-way street. I take it that from that there should be, in fact, limits on discussion. For example, evidence gathered between CERT and RCMP when those investigations are going on. Sorry. Really? I know the IQ has fallen in this world. I really do. But it's so sad. So you described in Fredericton at least a one-way street. I take it from that you believe that there should be, in fact, limits of discussion. For example, evidence gathered between CERT and RCMP when those investigations are going on. I am not aware of our investigators disclosing information that they obtained during the course of our investigations to the RCMP or any other police force involved. In fact, the permanent, what we say, we refer to this team commanders as CERT, permanent investigators swear an oath not to disclose information. As seconded officers, I believe swear the same oath when they are hired by a police agency. The oath includes the wording such as, quote, and will not, except for the discharge of my duties, disclose to any matter or evidence that may come to my notice through my employment. Okay. CERT. Let's see here. Received a call from Subject Officer Terry Brown looking for an update. I explained to him I had a report for the use of force expert in the transcript radio broadcast. He wanted to know if the investigation would be done by the end of the year. I explained that I could not promise as I would have to review the file when these reports were completed to determine if there was further investigative avenues. The report as a director made to the final decision. November 19th, 2020. Okay, guess they're having conversation. Let's go forward here. 178, I believe it is. Okay, 418. Reports sent to Kyla Linesberg. Received a call from Terry Brown, who was inquiring about the status of the file. I explained to him that the final report has gone to the director and it is now up to him to make the decision as to what takes place. I explained I was not able to provide a time frame when a decision may be made, given to the report and the amount of material that has to be reviewed. Odd. CERT having contact with the RCMP. Okay, moving along. Subject officers. So, if you're going to have a follow-up question as to whether or not our investigators talk to subject officers, the only conversation that they would have, or that I know that they've had, is the subject officer concerned with being the length of the investigation, the investigator saying it's still being investigated. Or my report is in the hands of the director. Quote, my report is in the hands of the director and he will issue the report when it's completed, end quote. There is no discussion. Oh, it's almost like he's looked at this. He's aware of what question's going to come. And it was made very, very clear, not by oath, not only by the oath that the officers had taken, but the discussions that we had, that there is no discussion about the evidence. I take it from what you've just said, then, you don't see any, or if you would not see that there should be any sharing of work product between CERT and RCMP or any other police force for that matter. For example, if CERT investigator constructed a timeline, you wouldn't expect, that to be shared with the RCMP. No, I wouldn't expect that to be shared. You had an expectation that it should be shared? What? No, I wouldn't expect that it would be. How about, more conclusive terms, like, it should never happen. No conversation should ever happen. And if it does, you get whacked with an additional charge. But no. But if the RCMP were to produce a timeline as a result of their investigation into a criminal offense where we would investigating the subject officer's behavior in order the same offense, I would hope that we would obtain that. Just saying that, now it's back to that. That's not what the question's about. Just saying that with this theme, I want to move to another document just to get clarification and some language on the annual report. I wonder, Ms. Ronsley, could you bring it back up again? Again, for the record, it's for a public document we have filed. Who's being rude? Sorry, I'm trying. I try and look a little over there as I can. Pat Curran refuses to discuss criticism. Well, Pat Curran got blamed for the guns. Well, it was him. And he's like, yeah, no, I wasn't involved. If they have any interview with Curran about that, because that might be relevant, and perhaps SECU might want to call him. What's that? This one. Former director, police watchdog, denies the telling not to release guns. Pat Curran, who led serious incident response team at the time of the shooting, says he, quote, gave no directives to the RCMP, and, quote, about the 5 firearms Gabriel Wortman had in his possession when he was killed at the gas station, April 19th. This contradicts statements made by RCMP Chief Superintendent Leather and Assistant Commissioner Lee Bergerman to parliamentary investigation for political interference. Perhaps Pat Curran should be called to testify before SECU. Moving along. I think it's page 9 on the counter, PDF counter. So this is the 2020-21 report. Ms. Ronsley, not yeah. So you'll see at the bottom of page 4 on the right side, carrying on to the top of the next page, it talks about the relationship between CERT and the police force. And the last line is, quote, CERT works with the police agency to ensure that its interests of justice are met. That the interests of justice are met. I wonder if you might just help us with what that means. I think what it means is that if we uncover something in our investigation, that it is relevant to what is being investigated by the police agency involved, that we would share that with them because it was relevant. You would share it. Oh, I thought there was not supposed to really be sharing. Oh, I haven't read it yet. I want to see SECU. Anything good in there, Invasion? It may not be relevant to what we're investigating, but it may be relevant to the investigation that they're conducting. Not really at arm's length. Staying with this general theme, I want to move briefly to the Bootland case. What is it that... Oh, I like that. Linda McDonald knew Susie Bootland. Oh, I'm still... What? Not a word. And when I say the Bootland case, I'll take you that you're familiar with what I mean by that. I am. And we're not going to go into anything to do with that, with the CERT report. It's actually an independent officer review report. Right. The officers involved. And I wanted to draw you into and ask you a question about. So I asked Ms. Ronsley to bring it up because you may not have a hard copy of that in front of you. It's COM 63223. It's page 4 of the report. Maybe we can make that a bit larger if we could. Thank you very much. I'm going to get a bit closer. Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, feel free to do that. If the timing issue that I'm driving at, Mr. Cacchione, and specifically you'll see in the middle of the paragraph, there's a reference to the conclusion of the CERT investigation, and then the commencement of the independent officer review. What I'm wondering about is whether there was any direction from CERT that this internal review that was being discussed here in this report was put on hold. In other words, did CERT issue any sort of direction to wait until its work was completed? Do you recall? I don't recall that. I don't recall that at all. Good evening, oh dear. Loves diversity, does not want to give his opinion on Onslow, was fine with RCMP FIS from Bible Hill, cataloging Big Stop, was mad about being asked to investigate Shuby 2 days after the fact. In your view, sitting here today, do you see any reason why your work needed to be complete before this internal review could get started? Oh, in comes Justice, Nova Scotia Justice. Can he answer that question? I'm just asking whether he sees any reason. I'm asking for his perspective on this. From his own perspective, does he see any reason why there was a need for the review to wait until the completion of the CERT report? I guess they're getting concerned. I don't see any reason why there would be a need for that. Not certainly from my perspective. If the RCMP felt that they needed a review, they could have started the review. This was certainly a fairly clear-cut incident where both use of force was justified. I want to move slightly different topic. Okay, move away. And that concerns the communications from CERT to a subject officer during an investigation. And you alluded to this in some of your previous evidence. What communications does a subject officer receive during an investigation normally? Well, they're given a notice that they're a subject officer and that they're advised that they do not speak to the investigator. Guess Terry didn't get the memo. ×2. Oh, Joanne. Do not speak to the investigator. They're advised that they can speak to counsel. And during the course of the investigation, as I said before, any communication, there may be communication with the subject officer if the subject officer agrees to give a statement or take a polygraph. about the incident if he's giving us or she is giving a statement to the investigator that is questions, then those questions are asked. But if the subject officer does not wish to speak to CERT and contacts the investigator knows not to speak about the investigation and say, it's ongoing. However, the report is in the hands of the director who will issue the report at the conclusion. That's it, quote unquote. I think he's waiting for this question. So let's move on to the end of the process that you've alluded to. I want to ask you about the statement in the annual report that what happens when the investigation is concluded. So we could go back, please, to the annual report, Ms. Ronsley, and go again to the top of, to the page 9 of the PDF counter. It's page 5 of the report. And you've got that in front of you. Wow, they actually have a hyperlink that works. And you've got that in front of him. We're looking at the heading, quote, what about those involved, end quote, on page 5. Do you see that? Yes. And as I understand, what's being said here is that at the conclusion of the investigation, that there is personal contact from the lead investigator and the director with the next of kin or the affected person about the results. Do you see that? Yes. And then it is also suggested that similar contact is made with the police officer who is the subject of the investigation. And so am I right that after an investigation, there will be personal reach out to the subject officer? The only time that there is reach out to the subject officer is if no charges are laid. And if charges are laid, there is no reach out. And this reach out is made before the report. The director's report is made public because the report goes to the minister and the policing agency, and then 2 days after, it is made public. So in the interim period, the affected party is notified that the report will be coming out and that the report will say that there are no charges laid. And if the affected party or their family has any questions about that, a meeting is arranged and the report is discussed and the reasons behind the bottom line of the report is addressed, and the offer is made to the subject officers. Most subject officers, where no charges are laid, do not take that offer. I recall 2 did, and they were in relation to the Portapic incident. The 2 officers that shot Mr. Wardman. And I recall most vividly about that meeting with Constable Hughley, who was one of the subject officers, was his concern that his name not be made public. I indicated to him, and I showed him the report, indicated that he would only be referred to as Subject Officer 1, SO1 in the report. Several days later, I pick up what I refer to as the chronically horrid and raid Craig Hughley's name. Just so I'm clear, that a reach out only happens when charges are not being laid, correct? Exactly. Yeah, the report speaks for itself. When charges are laid. And that's the end. Once they're laid, the file is out of our hands. It's now with the Public Prosecution Service. And what I'm going to suggest is that we take a 10-minute break before I move on to the next section. But before that, let's see if the other team members have follow-up to any questions that we've just covered. None for me. None for me. All right, shall we take 10 minutes? Okay, sure. The time is 2:02. We're taking a 10-minute break. wonder if I should cut the video when we get to the stuff about, because we're going to get here now to the report and do a separate one. Then it's easier for people to find, or I'll just cut it out maybe. Okay. So they come back 11 minutes later. It's 2:13 Atlantic, and we're resuming the interview with Mr. Cacchione. Over to you, Mr. Underhill. Thank you. So I want to move now, if we could, to specific interactions between RCMP and CERT, and this will require us to bring up some documents on the screen that you may not have hard copies of. And just to place you in time, I'm going to start with May 2020 and look specifically at the notes of Superintendent Santasuso. I'm sorry, May 26, 2020, and that's COM. Now, I didn't know. Do we have Derek's notes? I didn't know his notes were public. Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay. I believe that Ron they were both involved, because Ron left the scene. So I always thought it was rather odd and hasty. So we're looking at page 22. I think you may have it now, but maybe if we could just get a little bit bigger. Maybe we could, Ms. Ronsley, and just to help you, Mr. Cacchione, we're looking at some of the notes from Superintendent Santasuso. It's Derek Santasuso, who is now promoted to commanding officer of PEI and was very senior in IMT H Strong 2, which is very important. But the gatekeepers. From May 26, 2020, and the entry that I am interested in is the second one that you're seeing on the screen. Quote, Chief Superintendent Leather to follow up with CERT re-asking about keywords in their statements, end quote. And I would like to know if you recall any follow-up from Chief Superintendent Leather and what that is about. I wasn't there on May 26, 2020. When you say you weren't there, you mean you were out of the province? No, I wasn't in the role. Okay, now we're down to Pat again. I went off October 17th, 2019. I had something in the early morning of October 2019, and I returned to work June 1st, 2022. Obviously something medical, stroke, heart attack. Hopefully he's better and was able to complete his duties medically. Who was in your position when you were off on leave? Pat Curran. So I think it's sufficient to say that you can't help me with any of this. I don't know what's in reference. Follow up asking about keywords in their statement. No, I can't. Sorry. Let's move forward in time. It's an interesting statement. What page was that again? I just want to look at that. Page 22. The ENR3 log, that's their special database. Chief Superintendent will follow up with CERT asking about key words in their statement. Planning article. Officer Safety Bulletin. Chief Superintendent Leather to follow up, re-asking about keywords in their statements. Interesting. So let's move forward in time then to January 21st, 2021. Yes. And I'm going to ask Ms. Ronsley to bring up the memorandum. It's COM 17903. Do you have a hard copy of that? No, I do not. Okay, this is a Hoyt stuff, which is okay, good. I haven't read, to my understanding, there's very little Hoyt information. So here's that. Or ESDC. No, I don't. All right. So I wonder if we can take a minute and you can have a look at the memo if you recognize it. Ms. Ronsley, can you scroll down as you need? If you scroll down, yes, scroll down as well, please. I don't recall seeing this document, says Felix. I know the name Sharon McClellan in the previous paragraph or earlier in the paragraph 1. I believe it was a civilian witness at some point who indicated that she had never been interviewed by CERT. However, we had a copy of that interview and the statement that she gave to the investigator. Well, that's contradictory, isn't it? Why don't we just carry on for a little bit and you can just read for a little bit more in the memo. And I'm going to ask you the same questions, or going to ask you some questions. So did Sharon give a statement or not in an interview? Maybe she hadn't been interviewed by CERT at the time that she said that, or pausing to read memorandum. Yes. Continues reading. Yes. Continues reading. Okay. Continues reading. Continue. Please. Yes. Okay. So he's reading it. So we can just go back to the first page, Ms. Ronsley, so we can have it here in front of us. You'll see that the memorandum is dated January 18th, 2021. It is prepared by Hoyt Team Investigator Commander Bobby Haynes. And it appears the analysis critique of the Johnson use of force report. Do you agree? Yes. Now, so you know, we have received a copy of the memo in this disclosure with the CERT records. So we understand this was in possession of CERT. Do you recall the memorandum? Around January 18th, 2021, in the days thereafter. I recall meeting with Hoyt, or Hoyt, having read that it refreshed my memory, and I do recall that. Why would a memo like this be sent to CERT from Hoyt? Well, I'm not so sure. I'm not sure. Hoyt, I believe, is a sort of health and safety part of the RCMP. I think the investigation that Bobby Haynes was conducting, I can tell you that Joel Johnson prepared that report. I can also tell you that I had real reasons with Joel Johnson, real concerns with Joel Johnson, and that we never retained him after that because his report, I found to be kind of one-sided. Real concerns with Joel Johnson and his report, kind of one-sided. But I did not base my report on what Joel Johnson had to say. I based it on the totality of everything I reviewed. And what was foremost in my mind was that in Onslow Fire Hall was the totality of the circumstances of, a number of people deceased in the night before, the early morning of that day, then a lull in activity for many hours, and then 3 people being shot in close proximity to the fire hall. And that's what I considered. I could see that the officers making the assumption that that the person they were told to get down and didn't get down and then started running. He had a vest on that matched what Lisa Banfield had said it was in a marked car. Well, let's hold on there a moment. Vest that what Lisa Banfield said. Did Lisa Banfield say about a vest? Where's that? Dun, 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 dun. Maybe I don't have that here anymore. Oh, yes. Right. Suspect last seen wearing black jeans, black vest, black hat. Colchester radio logs. Becomes, in the Brown interview a few minutes later, Lisa Banfield, quote, he had black jeans on, a burnt orange vest, and a black hat. But that's what he had on. I don't know if he changed. Nothing about a safety vest. Oops. No, I'm not sure where he's going with that one. Yeah. This is his file? Okay. I think from my recollection, after reading all of the certified transcripts of the radio communications, that there were only 2 communications about the fire hall being Safe Comfort Center. And I think that those were earlier on in the day, in the first series of shootings. Couldn't have seen a vest, wouldn't have been able to see a vest. It was 88 meters when they came to a stop. In order to apply pressure to the brakes and have the conscious thought to stop, you're a hell of a lot longer than 88 meters. I think it calculated as like 153 meters. No fucking way are you seeing shit. No way. And it was already even stated that Westlake wasn't even visible. So something else is going on there. Something way going on. I think from my recollection, having read all the certified transmission to communication. Okay. Do you have any recollection sitting here today of how this memo came to your attention? I don't. I don't have, no. Do you recall whether it's something you would have solicited or whether it came unsolicited? I don't recall. I do recall meeting with somebody from Hoyt. Now you know. And we're going to be fair. To be fair, we're going to come to that meeting. Before we get there, I want to stay focused on this memo. You said you don't have any recollection of receiving it. Is it during your tenure, was it your normal practice of getting memos like this from Hoyt or any other branch of the RCMP during an investigation? No. Would this have struck you? I know you can't exactly recall, but does this strike you as being out of the ordinary to get a memo like this? So if you'd never gotten it before, would that be out of the ordinary to get it? I think the answer would be yes. Would it have struck me as out of the ordinary? Is that the question? Yes. Yes. I never received anything like this before or after. Yes. Out of the ordinary. And what I'm driving at is I would have thought you would have been surprised to have received a memo like this from any branch of the RCMP during the RCMP CERT investigation. My recollection was that they were looking at the officers, as I said before, occupational health and safety aspect. I'm not going to take this any attempt to influence my decision in that file, the Onslow file. So they're just sending you stuff, junk mail, I guess. Having looked at it again, though, you will agree with me, it does contain what I think is fairly described as a critique of Johnson's use of force report, correct? Yeah, definitely it's a critique. It's a critique that I had of the report. I made it clear that we would not be using him again. I can recall speaking, I think it was to Keith Stoddart about, this guy seeming to making a decision instead of just outlining what the use of force is and how it should be used in different circumstances. Let's go forward to the meeting, which I understand took place January 21st, 2021. And to do that, I'd like to call up another set of notes, this time from Chief Superintendent John Robin. And that's COM 63685. I believe it's at the bottom of page 31. Well, IMT is good times. 8 strong 2 good times. And just before we go there, can I ask one question before we leave the memo? Please. Because the memo states that they had received the Johnson use of force report. And do you know why? Why Hoyt or the RCMP would have the use of force report at the time? I don't. So you don't recall sending it to them or directing someone else at CERT to share that expert report with the RCMP or with Hoyt during the investigation? I don't recall that. No. Did he share it? Okay, thanks. I wonder if you have the wrong one, says Justice Nova Scotia. Oh, yeah. It starts at 216. That starts at 216, says Felix. The one they have. Oh, here we go into this again. Oh, this one here is, yeah, this would be the other one. Oh, okay. Okay, says Felix. This is in the letter. Let's see that again. What did they say? Please don't use that. Please don't use. And don't upload it so people can read. Page 45, 120. This is Justice Canada again. Page 45, 1 hour, 20 minutes of the transcript. Mr. Cacchione references his understanding of CERT has been expanded to include the operating procedure. Is this what they're speaking of? Oops. No. Are they speaking about the different memorandum of understanding? Do you have what are they speaking of? Do you have a hard copy in front of you? I have, but it's really difficult to read because it's so tiny on the hard copy. I see. Maybe if you can expand it, Ms. Ronsley, so you can see it on screen a bit, that might help us. Now I can read the screen. So as we understand it, 21st January 2021, you'll see a number of people in attendance. Before we go any further, what happened at the meeting and the discussion, hoping that you might be able to help with some of the names. Okay, so is this Robin's notebook? And he's got a different copy? Page 31. Yep. So I guess he has a different copy. Interesting. Kyla. Christian and Manny. Can't see that. Kevin, Ron Leger, and Felix. Bobby Haynes, Chief Superintendent Robin, Kevin McLaughlin, Kyle Lonsbury. Wow. Oh, they got them all in a room. ESDC, Hoyt. Is that right? ESDC. Definitely all the Hoyt people and the CERT people. And 8 Strong 2, which is the gatekeeper of information to ESDC, Hoyt, and MCC, John Robin, at this point in time. And Christian, I believe that's probably going to be Christian Gallant. Kyle Lonsbury. Okay. Different copies? We know some of the names. We know some of them, but some of them we can't make out. You'll see quite clearly at 1 o'clock, the meeting 1 o'clock says Kyla. Then going across the top, again, help me. It looks like a name that starts with CH. I have no idea. I don't know. And then it looks like Murray. Does that name ring a bell? No. And then it says Kevin Auger. Do you see that name? Right below? Yes, I see it. Doesn't ring a bell. No, doesn't. Nobody. That doesn't ring a bell either. No. Ron Leger rings a bell. My name rings a bell. Ron Leger worked for you. I should hope that it rings a bell, and I hope that your own name rings a bell. I guess something's coming on now. Yeah. Superintendent Robin and Haynes. I can't make out the other name below, other than Kyla Lonsbury. And the one above her name, I can't make that out either. Okay, so let's see. Let's look at that again. Kyla? I don't know. Maybe kind of Christian, but maybe not. And Murray. Don't know. Kevin Auger, Ron Leger, Felix blank, Bobby Haynes, Chief Superintendent John Robin, Ken McLaughlin, and Kyla Lonsbury. Why did they ever ban that video when I did it? That didn't make me very happy. At least they banned it and didn't delete it like they do half my other shit. Okay. All right, so maybe we can scroll down a little bit, Ms. Ronsley, and bring up the substance of the notes and make them as big as you can. You can have a quick look at those, and then I'm going to go and ask you some questions about the meeting. Okay, so a refresher. $1:30 meeting with CERT. I don't think it is omissions. Bobby Haynes points out something / apparent with Johnson's report referencing their review of written report of Johnson. I clarify, this is Robin, I clarify that as we have a signed copy, as we had copy of use of force, we wanted to ensure CERT something of apparent conflicts in report with available evidence. Criminal offense, right? Scope magnification. Felix says Constable Gannon will in no way be blamed for anything, although, in brackets, although he hasn't completed report, recognizes Chris Leather. Okay, so then we go 2 o'clock, Chris Leather, Janice Gray, somebody, don't know that person, Lee Bergerman, Dennis Daly, okay, now down to Ottawa, Eric Stubbs, okay, alert ready, request for risk analysis, okay, so I think this is the only piece that they're referencing here. Asked Maureen about Hoyt way back. She claimed I've never heard of. I'm not sure. Maureen, who? Hoyt is, I've spoken about Hoyt for the last couple of years. Hoyt was used, it's an ad hoc thing that was set up to do with Moncton is the only other time that I know it's been used. The 2 officers, I didn't know if this third, the lead, Bobby Haynes, I don't think I knew about that. Kyla Lonsbury and Kevin McLaughlin I knew about, who are from E Division. I brought out, and Kevin McLaughlin had some issues with the Cortez Island stuff. If anybody ever wants to go off and research that, Cortez Island seems to be a bit of a mess. Maureen Wheeler, okay. Exclamation mark. All right, Maureen didn't help me, I'm sorry. The liaison for MCC. Okay, I've never spoken to her, so I don't know. Thank you. Truth. Superintendent Robin Haynes and Haynes. I can't make out the other names below, other than Kyla Lonsbury. The name about the one above that I can't make out. Okay, so doesn't know anybody who's at the meeting. Trying to say he doesn't remember the meeting. All right, so we scroll down, Ms. Ronsley, bring up the substance of the notes as bigger as we can. Okay, I can't make out some of the writing, unfortunately, says Felix. Okay, so I guess he's having some difficulty seeing. Yes, I understood. So we'll do the best we can. So before we get to the details that were discussed, can you tell me if you have a recollection of who initiated this meeting? I didn't initiate this meeting. I know that. Okay, so he knows he didn't initiate it. So you can't recall whether it was someone from Hoyt initiating the meeting or not? I can't. I'm not sure if Ron Leger would have asked for or told me that the RCMP wanted to meet, or if he suggested it, but I didn't. I didn't initiate the meeting. Okay, so he's running from that one. And you can't really recall who did at this point. No, I don't. Okay, so he's not on the hook for this one, right? Do you recall the purpose of this meeting was? Well, what I've read there. Okay, so he knows that he didn't initiate the meeting, but he's got to read to understand what it is. Okay, because I don't have any memory, or I don't have a memory. I don't have a memory of the meeting, but he knows he didn't initiate it. I suppose that's possible. It seems a bit odd. You know that you didn't initiate it, but you don't remember it. Okay. From what I've read there and what I've said before, it seems to be to me that it occupational health issue. Okay, so there's the three concurrent investigations going on: ESDC, Hoyt, ESDC, which is a labor investigation by Labor Canada, basically Hoyt, which is an internal RCMP investigation of labor safety, and the MCC, whatever that goop is that. There, I'll leave that with you. But just to make sure I understand, you don't have an independent recollection of that meeting and what we've discussed sitting here today? No, I don't. Let's see if these notes trigger anything for you. They may not, but you'll see the first line in the notes refers to Bobby Haynes, that's Hoyt commander, pointing out inconsistencies. Oh, it did say omissions with Johnson's report. That's a reference to Johnson's use of force report. Yes. Does that, beyond what's obviously written there, do you have any recollection of a discussion around that issue? I don't have a recollection of that. And am I right in saying that this is, again, not the kind of meeting you would normally have during a CERT investigation? Yes. I don't know. God's gonna make judgments at the end of the day. Make your beds. Get ready. But again, you can't help us with why this meeting was called. Is that right? I can't. I would be guessing. I don't want to guess. Do you happen to know whether there was any emails or other correspondence in advance to setting up this meeting? No, I don't have any recollection. I do know that everything in our possession was turned over to the commission. Every paper file, every email, everything we have, you have. Okay, so now I want you to remember that line. Okay? Please remember. All the emails, everything, he knows everything, right? It's all turned over. The last entry says, quote, Felix says Constable Gannon will not in no way be blamed for anything. And then in brackets, quote, although he hasn't completed his report, quote. Then it ends with recognizes, quote unquote. Does that trigger any memory of the discussion around that issue? It doesn't, Mr. Underhill. If it's in the notes, I probably said that, but I don't have any recollection. I know the report came out, but a few weeks after. My report came out February 26th, February. And this meeting was January 21st. January 21st, yes. And by that time, by January 21st, I had reviewed all the material and I was in the process of writing my report. I guess he was just there for cake and tea. They're all hanging out. Maybe it was on the back deck. But I had concluded, based on everything that I had considered, and in particular, as I said before, the 3 shootings that occurred shortly before this, the fact that the officers could not get on the radio for various reasons, which didn't talk to Brown, not Terry Brown, but Brown, what's his name? Dan Brown. Didn't talk to him. No, he's kind of surprised, the telecommunications guy, in an email. I don't know why you guys didn't speak to me. I'm the guy who knows. CERT didn't speak to me. And by the way, January 21st, the materials, I was in possession of writing my report. Various reasons. They bonged out. Right? Was it the Basts, or was it the bad radio tower? Overloaded with traffic. Not that the earlier night was, I don't know. I think I referenced to it. I know I referred to it in my report, as I couldn't get a bath because of the volume of traffic. So it was safe for me to say that. I probably did say that. That I concluded that Gannon didn't commit a criminal offense. When was that in question? When was that in question? Oh, this is an interesting development now, isn't it? I didn't understand that this was in question. Will not be blamed? Felix says, quote, Constable Gannon in no way will be blamed. No way be blamed for anything, end quote. Bracket, although he hasn't completed his report. But I thought you said you did. Recognizes. Ooh. But he says he's completed the report already. Can you help me at all with the previous entry right above that says scope magnification, quote unquote? Do you know about that? No idea. Whether I'm not sure. Prior to the publication of the report, do you recall any other meetings, communications with RCMP personnel, Hoyt or otherwise? Do you recall? Wow, that's not only a little leading. I don't not. There was a meeting with Assistant Commissioner Bergerman. I'm not sure of the date of the meeting. Do you recall any other meetings, communications with RCMP personnel? I do not. Next sentence. There was a meeting with Commissioner Bergerman. I'm not sure the date of the meeting, whether it was before the report or after. And all that I recall is that the meeting with the assistant commissioner saying that she was in our home. And I was shocked to hear that. And I said, what? What? And then she mentioned why. And it was because we were at one point, we had our cottage on the Airbnb. And it was rented out by someone who was a friend of Assistant Commissioner Bergerman. But I'd never seen her. We only rented it out twice. I can't remember. I remember sitting in Bergerman's office. I can't remember anything about the meeting other than she said, I've been to your house. I've been in your house, quote unquote. But let's see. Let's read that again. So that's two. That's two. Sorry. Prior to the publication of the report, you have any meetings with any RCMP personnel. I remember sitting in Bergerman's office. I do not. I remember sitting in Bergerman's office, and Commissioner Bergerman was checking out the Airbnb. Okay. I guess it was just, again, cake and tea, all hanging out. This time, I guess it's just Airbnb rental. Next time, it's garbage removal. Who knows? So we have Assistant Commissioner Bergerman's notes, the meeting in 24th, 2021, but the notes don't tell us anything about what was discussed. You have described a casual conversation around her being in your home. Am I right? You don't recall anything else about the meeting? I do not. I do not. Let's go back in time then. And you can actually find that in her notes. Do I have that up? Maybe not. I'll probably shut it down. Shut her down. I had to shut down my windows. Oh, wait. Yeah. Here's the Airbnb meeting. Because, they had to black out all the stuff underneath of it because it was all Airbnb related. Isn't this it? I believe. November 24. CERT. Appointment with Felix Cacchione. Airbnb. Irrelevant. Oh, but I guess there were other items discussed. Because there's another checkbox below that. Oh, another checkbox below that. Irrelevant. Okay. I think somebody's not telling true. What do you think? What do you think? 3 items. Maybe it was like, does the house come with supplied with food? CERT appointment with Felix Cacchione. 3 items. Okay. I do not. Don't know why it's in our notes. Let's go back in time, if we can, of March 2021. And unfortunately, we don't have the exact date because of some of the redactions. Irrelevant. And I think the easiest thing to do is situate to bring you up the notes, particular meeting, and that. So it's Superintendent Robin, 6386 this time. Is that the document I already had open? Okay. This is maybe more Airbnb, who knows? With Hoyt. And it's page 32. It starts there. Okay. Page 32. Okay. Sorry, no, this one here. Yeah, I have it up on the screen where the page begins. Can we get a little bit bigger? Felix. Yes, my name, Scott. I'm not sure if it's Brown, Johnson, Glenn Byron, Chris Leather, Darren Campbell, Sean Ald, and then Todd Brown. I recall that meeting. Oh, there's Todd Brown. Isn't Todd Brown that's the guy who said, like, why didn't you ask me about the bonging out thing and the vests? I'm the communications guy. I know. Todd Brown's public safety field communications. Yeah, this is the vest meeting. EMR2 system Bell Mobility. There's the email. We showed that yesterday, right? And he said, what is it? We were a little surprised that CERT did not contact us for the information related to this investigation. Our office has multiple IT tools that allow us to do our own forensic analysis of network performance. No other organization other than Bell Mobility would have access to these tools, including the RCMP. Okay. Sounds like good investigation going on here. All right. You can take a look at it. Maybe we'll just go to the next page, Miss Ronsley. It's a bit tricky. This may stretch Ronsley's tech talents. I have a copy of it. All right. So you see there's an email. Yes. Paste it into the notebook. Do you see that? Yes. And I'm wondering if you'd have a quick look at that, may assist our discussion of what we're meeting about. Yes, that was the meeting about the comment that is captured in this email. The sole reason why SO2 was unable to transmit was they were seeing because there was no available talk path due to the heavy volume of traffic. Don't think that was conclusively proven. Actually, seems like the traffic was kind of light at the time, if I recall. The meeting was initiated, says Felix, because of that comment. And the purpose of the meeting was to educate me about the radio communication system. And in my report, I referenced the number of radio communications that took place. 2,245 from the time the SO this is Onslow, were recalled to duty until they were fired. Until they were fired? So, basically I worked it out to be about 30,020. Math. I think I did an earlier video. Who initiated this meeting? I think it was Todd Brown. And he was obviously at the meeting. So Todd Brown, communications guy, initiates a meeting. And who all does he get to? Todd Brown. I wonder if Todd Brown can get like those type of folk in the same room. Do you think? Do you think that he can get everybody? Like, I don't know. Oops. Todd just gives just calls up and he's like, hey, you know what? Chris and Felix, Scott Johnson, Glenn Byrne, Darren Campbell, Sean Ald, I want to have a meeting. Oh, Felix. Of course, they all, I'm sure, know him. And they're just like, absolutely, we'll drop everything. Thanks for calling. Glad you were setting up this meeting. Don't know why I had an executive assistant. Not sure. He was obviously there at that meeting. He was. I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Sorry, he was obviously there at the meeting. Yes, Sean. I see there are also two members of the RCMP at the time, Chris Leather and Darren Campbell. 2 and 3 in the province. Well, I don't know where Janice Gray sits in that scheme, but she's got her own rank. One-off. Chief super. But technically it's 2 and 3. Yes. Are also there, correct? Yes. Why are they meeting at that meeting? I have no idea. I don't recall them participating in any fashion. What was discussed? I recall Todd Brown, and there was Glenn Byrne, as I recall, did a lot of talking. Those two. There were those two. Did he have difficulty recalling this meeting or no? No, he remembered it. He needed the tech education. He just forgot certain people were there. Key people. Big people. I don't recall either Leather or Campbell saying anything. That must be why he forgot. Glenn Byrne is also with the RCMP. I believe he put down his award. Yes, I believe he was. Yes. As was Sean Ald, as I understand it. Yes. So if the purpose was to educate you as the director of CERT about the radio system, and Mr. Brown, you said, initiated the meeting as best you can recall, I'm trying to understand why these various RCMP members are there, as opposed to you having a meeting with just Mr. Brown. I don't know. It was at HDiv headquarters. Maybe Mr. Brown works at the RCMP headquarters. Hey? And that's where I went. As I said, I don't recall them having making any comments during the meeting. Well, I think you said Mr. Byron was active, right? Yes, yeah. Yeah, and one of those things I recall him saying was, depending on where the officer's body was, the portable was held, or in a jacket, could transmit button could be pressed inadvertently by the bulletproof vest rubbing against something of this nature. Actually, I do know that to be true. That does happen quite a bit. The push to talk button. I've been told that is a problem. So after this meeting, or the ERTT button, sorry, the ERTT button, whatever, the RTT, I can't remember, the emergency button, basically. So after this meeting, was there any follow-up? What happened next? Nothing. This meeting occurred after the release of my report. Okay. So it didn't lead, obviously, to any amendments or supplementary report. Now, let me see. When was that? That was dated again? What date was that? Sorry, does somebody recall? No. Things are all blacked out here. Well, could be March 12th, I guess, but we don't have any page numbers. I think it's like they said, they don't really know when the meeting was. So was it after his report? I don't know. Emergency request to talk. I don't remember what the button, stupid abbreviation, RTT button or something. Anyway, moving on. All right, before I move to another area, I'll ask the team members, do you have any follow-up questions on anything we've covered? None for me. I have just one question. We've gone over a number of meetings that involved a number of members of the RCMP, and I'm just wondering if that created any challenges for you, any repetitions for you with so many people approaching you about these investigations. But I thought it was supposed to be like really at arm's length. Why is he meeting with all these people? What was it? Leather or Campbell? Robin said there. Realizes. Yeah. Realizes the importance of what they need. What, in terms of the number of people at this meeting that approached me, I don't recall members of the RCMP approaching me about this meeting. I recall Glenn Byron at this meeting and talking about the radio communication system, but perhaps I can be more clear. We've talked about a number of meetings that involved a number of topics and different members of the RCMP. We've talked about Mr. Robin at this one. We have Mr. Byron. And then we have Superintendent Campbell. And so I'm just wondering, these meetings that seem to be attended to were initiated by different members of the RCMP. If that was at all challenging to you or your staff. It wasn't, because I never felt pressured in any way that would influence my decision. Whatever decision I made at CERT was based on the evidence that I reviewed. But Todd said you didn't even talk to him. Was it Todd Brown? Whatever. Brown said you didn't even talk to him. Leather says he didn't even know if he did an investigation. Now, I spent 32 years on the bench. I spent another 14 years in practice defending cases. He said he didn't know. Could have been. Maybe it wasn't done. That was what Leather said. I base my decisions on the evidence, and certainly if I had any inkling that anyone at the RCMP was attempting in any fashion to direct me as to how I should make a decision, I would have screamed loud and clear, would have made clear to the public. Why is Bergerman coming to your home, even if it was an Airbnb? Does that present a problem? Perhaps that's a conflict. All right, great. Thank you very much. That was my question. I'd like to move on to the CERT referral that came to you, H Division, July 2020. Are you familiar with that referral? Okay, so I'm going to have to cut this part of the video just because 3 hours, a lot of stuff, other stuff, but good stuff. Now we're going to get into some other stuff. I'd like to move to the CERT referral in HDF, July 2020. Is this the one from Derek's Superintendent Diamopoulos? Exactly. And to Chief Superintendent Leather. Yes. And I'm not going to get into details on that referral. No need. But I do want to confirm, if you can, that referral involved a number of serious allegations, including potentially criminal conduct. Yes, against someone who was not an RCMP officer. Oh, I think there was a lot more than that. There was cover-up by senior officers. Correct. What I want to explore with you is the decision by CERT that it would not conduct its investigation, again, without getting into the specifics of the allegations in the referral. And as we understand it, you did have a meeting with Chief Superintendent Leather and Superintendent Diamopoulos Constant to discuss the referral. Is that right? I believe the meeting was to discuss the fact I would look at what they had, and I'm not sure. I think that I would look at the information that they had. I think it was a telephone conversation with Chief Superintendent Leather where I indicated that we would not be investigating. Remember, he gave all those emails? He gave all those emails? Note. Let's, if we can, just go through the sequence of events as best as you can recall them. Did the referral come in? Do you recall the referral coming in and how it came in? I think it was Chief Superintendent Leather who made the referral. And as I recall, there was a police officer, 2 lines almost redacted, who made allegations against a redacted, irrelevant redacted member of redacted. And what I reviewed was that officer's statement about what the officer alleged they had heard. I don't believe there was firsthand knowledge. And to be quite candid, there seemed to be no love lost between the RCMP and redacted. Obviously true, but, well, not obviously. I think we've got a bunch of people mixed up in this, a bunch of departments. And I wasn't going to get in the middle of that and in any way affect the independence of our organization. And as I said before, reviewing the redacted, quite lengthy officer had said that there was no basis for an investigation. I want to follow up on the last comment. But just to set the stage for that, just so I understand, am I correct that you received a report from Chief Superintendent Leather and Constantinopolis? Is that right? I can't remember if it was a report or a statement. I think it was a report. And so there is a couple of things you just said I want to follow up on. First of all, you said that there was no basis in that report for moving forward with a CERT investigation. Is that what I understood you to say? Yes. No basis. Can you elaborate on that without descending into details of the allegation? As I recall, the information was in that report was secondhand information. What I do, what has stuck out in my mind was being put in the middle of a situation, and I didn't feel we should be there. Let's explore a little more if we can. Are you saying you felt the report provided by H Division, specifically by Chief Superintendent Leather and Constantinopolis, was perhaps, at least in part, motivated by a turf war between the two organizations? Well, there certainly was no love lost between the author of the report, and redacted, and the redacted person, irrelevant, in redacted. And that, instead of investigating it themselves, they, because of this, you said, a turf war, they wanted us to do it, and I wasn't prepared to put us in that position. Okay. Did you get an understanding from either Chief Superintendent Leather or Superintendent Constantinopolis, that the reason they didn't want you to investigate was because of this turf war? No, that was an assumption I made, because I knew that blank had made comments about the RCMP and the person who wrote the report, blank. It all just didn't smell right to me. I didn't want to get into it. Superintendent Constantinopolis told us in his interview that he and Chief Superintendent Leather considered it inappropriate for the RCMP to be involved in any investigation, and that is why they referred it over to CERT. Do you have any comment on that? Well, they made it the referral, but we didn't accept it. And you didn't accept it because it was A, based on secondhand information, is that correct? Yes. And B, that you felt that it would be putting CERT in the middle of what I would say, the word I've used, turf war. It would be a better word between blank and the RCMP. I'm suspecting that's true. Yes. Are there any reasons you did not proceed forward with the referral? No, none that I can think of. Superintendent Diamopoulos also said that in his interview, a request came back from you in his office to provide assistance with potential investigation of that referral. Is that correct? I have no recollection of that. Huh? What? Hmm. That is terrible. Oh. I feel terrible that Leon. Well, I'm sure Leon wants also to justice, right? That's awful. Wow. Much. Yeah, I don't want. I don't want this message to be lost in amongst that. It's a. It's an extremely, but obviously you're dealing with two things, right? This Leon, very serious, but the corruption matter is extremely serious. It's terrible. Yeah. I don't know what to say. Oh, I'm good. Like on that level. Thank you, Lunos. It's important that everybody look out for each other. No, thank you for you guys are good. You know? Yeah, we do. I don't, that's why I'm just like, I don't know what to say. It's, I'm sorry. I don't want the message of the of the corruption and all this to be lost here. I think that I know Leon would want the truth. That's what he pushed for, right? So that's what really kind of tears me. I don't know what to do. But I don't want the message being lost because, like Blue Nose rightly said, I mean, it's very distracting. It's hard to focus. Have to remain strong, you guys. I think that's when you're not feeling good, just reach out, you know. I think that's what makes us special. Most of us, I would say, most. I have to put a disclaimer out there, and I'm sorry to be negative, but it is true. Not everybody here is here for the right reason, but that's always the way things are. The devil always has his hand in things. But we have a good group for the most part, and people who worked hard, and it's I know in speaking to some of you, it's trying. It's trying. Like, that's just the truth. Going for justice is never easy. It will always weigh heavily. It's a battle. The devil will never make it easy. It just must be strong. I agree. You know, like I just don't want to get. I don't want the. I don't. I hate this kind of stuff because I'm not good with words. I'm just not. What do you do? What do you say? There's nothing you can say. Other than resolve, strength, say to, and heartfelt, meant that, and mean that to other people, like be there for each other. But at the same time, I think it does give extra resolve for the truth, right? It makes it that much more important. These people want it to go away. They want to shut everybody down. There was a government program. It did buy homes. These certain homes, right? Certain pieces of property. I know in reading Mallory Colpitt's thing, she said, no, who was it? Somebody else was having a hard time. But the government bought certain pieces of property, seemingly at fair market value. One has to wonder. I think maybe that's the only appropriate thing to do now is just be there for each other and yeah. Somebody in the area who was buying a property too, right? A lot to think about. I think that's the only appropriate thing to do right now. Is take the time tonight, maybe. I don't know. And just check. Be good to yourself and to each other, and come back tomorrow with more resolve, more strength, because this should just absolutely fire everybody up then. Because If Leon didn't get justice, which didn't, right? Families didn't get justice, and this is what it's doing, then that means we have to fight harder. You know, use that energy, pull it in as a resolve, but it always makes us think of people we've lost in our lives, right? Suicide is never a good thing. But he felt unheard. And I think that's the only way to really honor his legacy is just fight harder. Are you I don't know if that makes sense. And make sure that you're strong. Eat, sleep, talk to people. Trauma-based. Yeah. I think that's the best thing to do is just break for now and take the time to work through the emotions on whatever level you're at, and then come back with heavy resolve. Renewed power. Use that power. More determination. Yep. Double it down. Like, I hate that saying. So it's almost ranks up there with Folsom or any number of them, but double down. Anyway, hugs to everybody. Yeah. We aren't alone. That's what they're afraid of. You're powerful. And you know it. And most of all, they know it. And they're afraid. They pissed their pants. God bless you all. God bless the 24. We'll come back. We'll fight harder. This just gives me new strength. I'll fight even harder now. God bless the 24.